And here we have the OTA. So what we're going to do is we're going to see what changes we need to make to the OTA before I actually mount it. And I actually like to put most of my equipment on the OTA first. That way we can balance it properly before we actually connect it to the mount. Now, one of the first things that I want to mention is that you can see I have this gray dovetail bar here on my R200SS OTA. And by default, it comes with this kind of bar, and this is like I think it's made for the Vixen type of what is it like shoes, whatever you call the mounts for Vixen that have screws, and that screw in there, and it's probably meant to go into this groove there. And it doesn't work well with the EQ6R, to say the least. So I have bought a separate dovetail bar from a Japanese manufacturer, but I do believe that you can buy that fairly easily in the US as well for my Vixen OTA. So this is something to keep in mind. Also, I removed the handle on the OTA. You don't have to remove it, but I'll be mounting my guide scope on top of the OTA in the end, which is why I've done that. Now, before we get the OTA installed as well, what I want to make sure of is that I have my autofocuser installed. Plus, I will want to make sure that I have my coma corrector, since this is a Newtonian telescope. If you're using a refractor, it's much more relaxed, and you can, just put you don't even need to put anything on the OTA before you mount it, although it is better for at least the electronic focuser, but otherwise it is very straightforward with a refractor, a bit more than with this Newtonian. So first things first, I want to mount this EAF. So the EAF for electronic automatic focuser from ZW is, well, a decent focuser for the price. I'm not a huge fan of it, but once you get the backlash under control, it works fairly well. So it comes with this kind of like shaft. What is it? Like, I have no idea how to call that. But if I open the box, it comes with this kind of knobs, or again, whatever you call them. And they're able to replace the focus knob here, and you insert them on top of the shaft. So what you want to do first thing is actually to remove the focus knob where you will be mounting your electronic focuser. For me, it's going to be this one, and then check whether you can actually put that on and screw it in properly so that it is securely connected. For me, it was the third one from the left that I used from the angle that you're looking at right now, although your mileage may vary. But all of those shafts can be used with the EAF, but you want to choose the right one, just for your telescope. So if you have like a Skywatcher telescope or all sorts of common refractors or Newtonians in the US, then it is very easy, because you have tons of forum posts, all that kind of stuff detailing what everyone has been doing, so it makes things easier. For this particular OTA, it's a bit more complicated, because I will actually need an adapter. To properly mount on top, and this is sold by a Japanese shop. I do not know whether there's something equivalent in the US, so you may need to 3D print that yourself, plus get new screws that are slightly longer by the width of this adapter to screw in there. So that is something to keep in mind, and that makes things a bit more difficult for this particular OTA. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to remove the knob here. So the Vixen focusers, just to be clear, I love this OTA optically. It's awesome, and it's the only Newtonian OTA that I am aware of that you do not need to collimate. It's not made to be user collimated, but the focuser is mediocre at best, just for information. So that is but once you've automated it, it's fine. But anyway, I'm removing one first grub screw, and it's not the real one that actually attaches the focus knob. There's a second one inside that I can loosen and then remove the knob. Before I lose it, I am actually going to put back that first grub screw, so I'm not making it run around in a terrible manner. And then I've already attached my attachment plate that comes again with the ZW EAF focuser. so that I'll be able to kind of mount it in this sort of fashion. So when you do that, you want to make sure that the focuser is kind of at the right angle, so that the screw that you're going to be using, the grub screw that you have in there that's going to be attaching to this shaft, will be actually, you know, at the right angle, so it attaches to the flat part of the shaft here. So you want to make sure, like, okay, if I put it like that, I will be screwing it in that hole, so I need to make sure to be roughly at that angle. You know, that kind of basic but easy to forget kind of stuff. So for me, I'm going to remove those two screws using a Phillips screwdriver. Those are the default screws that come with this Vixen telescope. And here we are. So now we are ready to actually attach this focuser. So let's see. Yeah, that will be perfect angle. So you can see that if I try to attach it, it will actually like have some kind of angle, which is why I have this little attachment plate that is available, again, only from a Japanese vendor. If I find where I bought it, I'm gonna link it in the description down below, but otherwise, you're on your own. So we're gonna attach the screws that came with that adapter, that are longer screws by the width of that adapter, so they replace the Vixen screws from there. For Skywatcher kind of telescopes, I believe that the installation is much easier. So, you know, this is like the complex stuff. Okay, I'm properly attached, so this is like well attached, and I just need to basically screw in the grub screw of that little shafty thing on the focuser itself. For me, the angle is not ideal. I should have done better than that. But now it is properly screwed in. So what is very fun to see, or fun, kind of depressing to see, is that there is still quite a bit of backlash, and this is backlash that will need to be compensated. But still, the focuser is on, and it will be able to rotate that focuser shaft, which is a good thing. So the next step is, now that we have the focuser properly attached, the coma corrector for me. So for me, this is the pH coma corrector. And it is a very weird kind of system, and the instructions that come with it, let me actually close back this while I'm talking, but the instructions that come with it are not super clear. So you can remove this from the telescope, which comes with it by default, and you have this ring, if I remember correctly, and that ring there, and the pH corrector actually fits in there. And here I have the pH corrector fitting, and now that I have attached the pH corrector like that, I actually have external threads like that, so I can actually just like dump it within the OTA. And that was not obvious to me at all when I first used it. And the external ring there can be chosen to change the rotation angle of that particular pH corrector, which can be very, very, very useful. Okay, so now the pH corrector is more or less set in. So the next piece of equipment that I will screw in is actually this. Now this is several adapters, a tilt adapter from ZWO. Your mileage may vary. You will probably have different adapters. If you want more information about how I decided upon all of that, you will want to watch one of my previous videos in Starting Astrophotography for Lazy People about back focus. Back focus is horrible. It's one of the most difficult parts of astrophotography, but it needs to be handled. And for me, this handles back focus from my camera very well, and I explained it in that video. So I'm just going to screw that in. Okay, and the next step I have would be the filter wheel, but I have something else first. I have a very ghetto kind of thing, which is this, because the Vixen focuser apparently has some light leak, and by doing something like this, you can get rid of that light leak very well. So I want to insert it first. That's just for me. Yeah, again, for you it might be different, but I like to have that so that I don't get any light leaks while imaging. And then the next step for me to achieve the 55mm back focus distance with this particular coma corrector is the filter wheel. And the filter wheel is from ZW. Now, a filter wheel is another can of worms. For me, this is a 7x 36mm filter wheel. I chose 36mm unmounted filters to make sure that I would never get any vignetting with my camera, which is Micro Four Thirds format, in any situation. I have LRGB filters from Optolong in there, and I have H-alpha, S2, and O3 3nm filters from Astrodon, and those are narrowband filters that are awesome to use in Tokyo light polluted conditions. This filter wheel from ZW works great for me. It has 20mm of thickness, so it uses 20mm of the back focus space, but it is great. The mounting mechanism, let me actually show you. The filter wheel comes with something like that. If you're using mounted filters, like you use the 8x 1.25 inch mounted filters, filter wheel from ZW, or you use their mini filter wheel. And again, filter wheel will be only useful if you have a monochrome camera. If you're still debating whether you should go monochrome or color, you may want to check my video on that that I'm linking to up above. But there are plastic rings like that, little red washers and little screws. Now what I do typically, it might be difficult to see at an angle there, is that I have I plop in my unmounted filter, then I put the red washer and then the screw. Now it works well for the Optolong filters. For things like narrowband filters, the filters are very thick, like 3mm thick, and it becomes a bit more difficult, but overall it seems to be working quite well. So it's working well for me. Another thing is that if you're using the EFW, you will want to put the bulge there towards the camera, so you'll want to screw it in this direction. Now before I screw it in, I want to do that just so that I don't have too much dust on the filters. Okay, I get my spacing right. Okay, and the angle that I want is actually not that far off, because I want the filter wheel, well, it is far off actually. I want the filter wheel to be pointing like kind of downwards there, so that it's like in balance with the rest of the telescope. So what I'm going to do is, with this it's not easy. I'm actually going to, that's difficult. Okay, I'm going to remove. Okay, I can access the little ring that I mentioned earlier that can control the rotation. That is my goal. I want to get this particle angle. And now that is achieved, so this is exactly what I wanted, and I'll keep it like that. It's not perfect, but it is good enough. So we have our filter wheel with the filters in it. And the next step for me, I believe, is just the camera. So the camera is my 1600mm cool. So it's the old version of the 1600mm Pro. For me to get the right back focus, I'll just remove this 11mm black ring at the front, and I'll just screw it in as is. And with that, my OTA is ready. Isn't that cool? So there is one thing actually I forgot, which is this. It is a 1mm ring that helps me achieve perfect back focus distance for me. So I put it on. here we are, right? So that's quite easy as well. And here we are, we're good. I'm getting tired, but we're making good progress here. So now we are ready. We have the electronic filter wheel. I have my little light shade. I have the proper back focus. Sorry, I said this is the electronic focuser, the electronic filter wheel with all of the filters in there. The camera is connected. Everything is okay. So now I can just take this telescope and mount it on top of the mount. So we're getting closer and closer. Isn't that exciting? So let's put it on top of the mount together. Okay, and here we are. And actually, one of the things I like to do before, and I actually did it on the chair, is well, a way where you're having like the OTA like on the edge of a table, the edge being here, and then you see where the OTA will start to tip forward, and this is your point of best balance. So once you know that, you can just, you know, find that point of best balance and, you know, make sure that when you put in the OTA, so you just put it in the mounting shoe here, and then you'll just, you know, screw it in like that. Make sure that is properly put in. You don't want the OTA to fall off as you do your first slew. And here we are. We're getting closer and closer and closer. So I think with that, that's it for this video. So we looked at the OTA. So the OTA is, my OTA in particular, is a Vixen R200 SS. It has quite a bit of like disadvantages in terms of how you attach the electronic focuser to it, in terms of the dovetail, in terms of the focuser itself, like tons of little mediocre things, but the optics are really good. I don't think there's a lot of variability between those Vixen optics. I believe those are made in Japan. It's pre-collimated at the factory. This worked well in Japan. I do not know whether like the ones shipped in the US would have excellent collimation from the get-go, but for me it did. So it worked very well, and it has some great coma reducer. So it has a cheap coma reducer called Coma Reducer V3, I think. Which I have not tested, so I cannot say anything about. And I use the pH coma reducer, which also is a reducer for the whole system. So this system is actually f3.8 in terms of focal ratio, so which is really, really nice. And the electronic focuser is, for me, it's from ZW. It has the advantage of being cheap and small. It has huge amount of backlash. There's lots of variability between the units. But it kind of works, and it's cheap, so it ticks boxes, and it's easy to install, easy to put on. But you know, if I had to do it again, I'm not sure I would choose the same one. But actually, I'm thinking about getting a focuser for planetary imaging, and I might just go again for the EAF because it is so cheap and it's easy to get in Japan. So you know, your mileage may vary as usual. The filter wheel from ZW, I've used both the mini filter wheel and this filter wheel. They were great. I don't have any issues with them. And then the 1600 Cool, which is what I typically use. Sometimes I switch it for an ASI 533 MC Pro, which is an awesome camera, especially like it works well in Tokyo. And it would work well amazingly in darker areas. If you're interested in that camera, by the way, I have a review about it. Please feel free to have a look. And all of those, I will be putting links down below if you want to support me and you feel like buying any of those items. And you know, the prices on OPT are to your liking. I mean, don't go out of your way to pay more, obviously. But if you know, if all the stars are aligned for you to buy this equipment, it would help a lot if you use the affiliate links that I have below. And with that, I think we're going to say this is the end of this video. So again, thank you so much for watching. If you are new to this channel, please consider subscribing. There's tons of content, not just this kind of like practical tutorials, but also like very technical videos about gain, offset, helicopters going in the background and messing up with my take. Sorry about that. We have gear reviews, we have all sorts of stuff, imaging nights, tips and tricks, all this kind of stuff on this channel. So if that seems like it should be interesting, please feel free to subscribe, click on that notification bell icon to know when I post a new video. And with that, also please feel free to to leave a like or a dislike on the video if you want, to leave a comment down below. And again, thank you so much for watching. Whenever you can, don't forget to look up at the stars, and I'll see you next time.